what will it take for peace activists and groups like ours in our country to overcome the military industrial complex to basically end nuclear weapons?
Well, my own hopes, perspectives about that are actually a lot more alive or vigorous today than they were even a few years ago, a few days ago. I read a report put out by Bill Hartung, Hartung, who has long been an expert that I've been in touch with on the role of the military-industrial complex, the military-industrial congressional complex, or as my friend Ray McGovern calls it, let's see, Mickey Matt, the military-industrial, congressional, intelligence, and so forth. It goes on, think tank, academic, they're all involved. But above all, I was very struck that this report is on inside the ICBM lobby. And very unusually, not for Hartung, but for other people, it specifies the people who are standing in the way, people and institutions that are in particular standing in the way of any significant disarmament. And I would have to say that in the nuclear field, up till now, there hasn't been what I would call significant disarmament. We've actually dismantled more than 80%, maybe 85% of the warheads. And yet, considering that a couple hundred warheads are creating firestorms on cities will create a nuclear winter around the globe, just sent by one side or both, a couple hundred, maybe 100, will loft smoke into the upper stratosphere that will cut out 70% of the sunlight and within a year exhaust global food supplies and kill by starvation nearly everyone. So a nuclear winter capability you could call near omnicide, using John Somerville's term for killing everyone. Well, people focus on the question, is it total extinction or not? And actually there was a new book, if you saw that other thing interview I gave, I actually referred to it recently in the London, what was it, the New York Review of Books, I think it was, that looked at the problem being things that would cause total extinction. And since he decided reasonably that nuclear winter would not cause total extinction, nor would the climate change, he brushed them off the table as things to worry about and looked at the possibilities of artificial intelligence or biowarfare, possibly robots and everything else. That might actually finish us all off. So he focused on that, which is ridiculous. Okay, so Hartung points out that basically a handful, and in this case, looking at ICBMs, Northrop Grumman, which is the sole major contractor, the main contractor now for the new so-called ground-based strategic deterrent, the replacement to the Minuteman III, the brand new ICBMs, basically, which will cost in their production and their initial installment about $100 billion, but over the period of their lifetime, $250 billion, 249 billion. That's pretty precise number there, not 250, $249 billion on something that should not exist at all. In fact, something so dangerous that it would be worth spending that money to keep it from existing. If you had to do that, if it took that, and it's not enough to get rid of the GBSD, the ground-based new ICBM, you have to get rid of the current ICBMs, the Minuteman III, 400 of them, which constitute the hair trigger on the doomsday machine. They're the element of the force that presents the president in case of a tactical warning, which, of the kind we often get falsely, 10 minutes or so to decide whether to end most human life on Earth. And that's because of the ICBMs. Use them or lose them, launch them or lose them. Getting rid of them, that would be worth $100 billion. And you know, you could almost, if it were all salary, if it were all, workers' pay, yes, it would be worth to put them all on the payroll for a year of transition while they find other jobs, and you train them and you move them if necessary. Uh, Even give Northrop Grumman officials their bloated salaries rather than produce these things, keep them in. Okay, I would have said even a week ago literally, that I saw no prospect for getting rid of those ICBMs. That Biden, when I looked at his foreign policy team, I didn't see that happening. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, with a very few exceptions, like Bernie Sanders, Barbara Lee, have talked about reducing the defense budget at all. Certainly, it was not a part of the campaign, and it really never has been for a long time. So I didn't. It wasn't going to change. I saw myself as living with that threat, whether I live another year or another 10 years. Um, the kind of the maximum. I didn't see that likely to change. When I see the Hartung thing being so specific and detailed about the effects of the lobby, uh, and not just think tank people who are spinning out propaganda and marketing rationales for these weapons, but the people who have suitcases full of cash, basically, or in any case, campaign donations, jobs for the people in the military who make the requests for the missiles that they then get to satisfy and so forth. Um, and then I put that together with the fact that there are a few people who are pressing to end the ICBMs, and that this is a time when the public might focus on that. Frankly, I was looking at a possibility of a campaign against ICBMs a year ago, and there were op-eds on it and so forth. People like former Secretary of Defense William Perry has been saying this for years. A former head of the Strategic Command, James Cartwright, who's in charge of the ICBM, said, get rid of them. No effect, no attention. Op-eds in the New York Times and whatever. But a year ago, I thought, you're not going to get people to focus on this, during a campaign. And then the pandemic came along. It seemed impossible. Well, now the president, at last we have a president who is working on the pandemic. So it's not totally up to us now to figure that. He's even addressing the climate problem, not adequately yet, but still he's on the case. It is imaginable that we could get public attention now for ending the hair trigger ICBMs and here's the way Hartung puts it, as a first step. First, eliminating the funding, eventually 100 billion, eventually 200 billion, for the GBSD, kill that. They talk about reducing it, but I'd aim higher than that, killing the money for the GBSD before it gets unstoppable. When enough money is put into the development and deployment of these things, there is no experience with stopping them. They're in effect unstoppable. Too many people involved in the states, the 30 or 40 states that they have building these things, etc. Too many congressmen have been bought for it by this. It's got to be stopped now. And then he does say doing that as a first step toward the elimination of ICBMs. Yes, absolutely. And by the way, Adam Smith, the head of the House Armed Services Committee, now Democrats, has been for getting rid of the ICBMs for a while. I've talked to him about it. The only trouble being he's got 59 members or so on that committee, and they mostly don't agree yet. But even though Adam Smith is, as Hartung shows, you'll see in his pie chart, is one of the major recipients of money from the military-industrial complex. He's head of the Armed Services. It was before the minority. Even so, he is against it, the ICBMs. So we have something to work with there. And I am in a totally different mood from what I was just days ago. I am now thinking we do have a chance to get rid of that hair trigger, and then it takes longer, to disabuse people of the myths that have kept this whole arms race going for 60 or 70 years, actually, since Hiroshima, but certainly since the 50s. uh, that will take longer to get them off, but we'll have a start. Whereas if we commit ourselves to building new ICBMs for 30 or 40 years, nothing can really happen on either side. It turned out that work on climate, exclusively that existential threat, because we'd be committed on this. But you're hearing me say now, I'll tell you actually that I really do see a real chance to do that this appropriation season. So you asked, it's a very long answer, but it's the key question for this group, which is there something for us that we can actually hope to achieve of great interest, of great progress? If we can get rid of the ICBMs and as a first step, stop this new funding, that is a basis for moving the hand of the doomsday clock back. And there hasn't been anything else like that for a long time. And I can't point to any other single thing that would do that way. Changing the Cold War atmosphere right now, and of course, work on climate would have some good effect there. Good effect. But this one, I would urge the Bulletin of Atomic Sciences to say, if you can get on the way to moving the ICBMs back, you can move that clock back, and that's more than symbolic.